very good morning to you. My name is Shangkari, and I run a series of workshops called Mindfulness with Shangkari. So, in today's practice, we're going to explore the second stage of integrative awareness. So, in the first two stages, we looked at how to use the breath as an anchor and how to integrate or regulate the breath in order to have a deeper, more profound meditative or mindful experience. So, in today's practice, we're going to explore emotions and feelings. So, this is the second stage or the second part of a second aspect of the practice. So, before this, we connected with our heart. Our hearts are our feeling centers. When we connect with our hearts, we begin the process of meeting our emotions or meeting our emotional selves. This is an aspect of the psyche, we can think of it that way, or we can think of it as the part of us that responds in this world from an emotional perspective. First, let us explore the difference between emotions and feelings. So, there is a distinct difference between emotions and feelings. First is feelings, and feelings are something abstract. We sense them, it is a perception of a feeling state. So we may sense the feeling of joy, we may sense the feeling of sadness, we may sense the feeling of fear. All of these are different feeling states. They're almost abstract and we sense them external to ourselves. And emotions, on the other hand, are more physical experience of feelings. So when feelings settle into our physical body and start to run messages through our physical body or transmute information to our physical body responds, and we call this response emotion. So we can feel emotion almost in any part of our physical body. We feel emotion in our hearts, we feel emotion in our solar plexus, which is this area right here. We may feel emotions in our we may feel emotions in any other parts of our body, our backs, our feet, our hands, our palms. So emotions are physical translation of the feelings that we are sensing. It's almost a physical experience. So why is it so important to connect with our emotions? Why is it so important to meet our emotions with compassion? Our emotions is the part of us that tells us what's going on in our mental state, what's going on in our emotional state, and what's going on physically. It's almost a messenger that tells you how you are when you are in that moment. It's almost reflecting your state of being. So if you feel stressed, if you feel anxious, that is an emotional reaction to an experience you are facing or an experience you are having. So if you put yourself in a troubling situation, or if you find yourself in a troubling situation, your emotions will tell you, will send you a distress signal. So they're simply messengers. They're not there to harm or hurt, though they feel distressing, they feel uncomfortable because they want you to take a look at what's going on so you can respond. So how do we respond to our emotions and how do we respond to our feelings? Feelings are almost abstract. So they're not a full-blown emotion. They start off as a little piece, you can think of them as little distinct pockets of energy, of feeling, sort of external to us. We almost sense them, we perceive them, but we do not actually connect completely with them until they are translated by our physical system, by our physical body. So it is it's a very simple practice to connect with our emotion, especially when they've become a full blown emotion. When we feel the distress, we feel the discomfort. It is almost, it's like a wake up call. It's telling us, take the time now, take the time now to sit down, take the time now to breathe, take the time now to look at what's going on here. So, whenever you have this feeling, whenever you have an uncomfortable emotion, whenever you have a difficult emotion, almost start and begin with the technique of centering yourself into your breath, centering yourself into your physical body. Take a moment, take the time. Take the time to allow yourself. Take a few breaths, especially if you're almost towards a state of panic or you're having a panic attack. You can use this technique to almost recede back, recede. You're almost zooming out of yourself, zooming out of that experience to get a bird's eye view, in a way, of your experience of that situation or circumstance you find yourself in. So take a few moments, just breathe naturally. Just follow the cycle of your breath. Perhaps if you're towards a panic attack, your breath might be shallow, it might be distressing, you might feel it rapid. So you want to take the time to first feel the natural flow of your breath. If it is rapid, if it is shallow, allow it to be, allow it to be. Just turn your awareness to it. Turn your awareness internally to your breath, to your breathing, and watch, observe as it slowly begins to slow. It slowly begins to calm. Observe your heart. You might have a sense that your heart might be beating a little faster than usual. Observe your heart slow down. Observe, take however long it takes, however many breaths it takes for you to almost calm yourself into the present. When you've done that, almost take a quick scan or just feel what you can feel, sense physically around you. Perhaps you feel cold or warm. Perhaps you feel the chair beneath you, or you feel your feet on the ground. Perhaps you smell something, you hear something. Allow yourself to feel these physical sensations as your physical sensory systems come on board, and allow yourself just to sink, just to settle, and to take note. Take note. So we're using the breath as an anchor, and then we're using that anchor to allow our perception and our perceptive abilities and senses to sink into the physical body. Please take a few moments. You don't have to do anything. Just observe. Just take the time to be in this moment. We want to anchor ourselves as fully as possible in our physical body, in our physical environment. So we want that connection, that deep connection to our physical selves. So the next step, once we are comfortable, once we are all right and we feel centered physically, we want to take our connection to our hearts. Take our awareness to our hearts. Observe that space. Observe that space. Just take a few moments and connect with your heart. You may place a hand on your heart. And now we may begin the process of connecting with our emotions with compassion, with objectivity, with neutrality. And then we are going to go through the process of processing our emotions. So take the time as you connect to your heart, as you connect to the aspect of your psyche that is your emotional self. Feel, sense if you have any emotions arising naturally. So once you've taken yourself out of panic mode, you may still feel the echo of that emotion that had inspired or sort of brought about that panic state. You may feel the echo of that emotion somewhere in your physical body, perhaps in your belly, in your gut, perhaps in any other different part of you, perhaps your feet, if sometimes you feel emotions that sort of trigger the fight or flight mode. You may feel that sensation move down to your feet. So take the time to notice whereabouts in your physical body you feel this emotion, you feel the echo of that emotion. Observe how this emotion feels inside of you. Does it feel tense? Does it feel uncomfortable? Use any description that you have that comes to you describing this emotion. You almost want to gain that detachment, that observer awareness with that emotion so you may meet it. We're going to meet it as an external entity and not involved in that emotion. We're going to meet it from external point. So take your time. Observe that emotion. We're going to describe it. We're not going to judge it. We don't want to judge our emotions because that causes more distress. That adds on to the already awful feeling or emotions that you're feeling. You don't want to add on. We just want to observe. So we may be able to begin the practice of neutrality, observation with neutrality, or awareness with neutrality. So once you've done giving it the description that it feels, that resonates with what the emotion actually feels like, you can describe it using an analogy. So that's perfectly normal, and that's you want that sometimes, especially if it is a complex emotion and you feel that it's trying to tell a story. Describe it, use an analogy. Use any analogy you like. For example, you may feel as though you're being constricted in a small space. That is an analogy. You may feel as though you're being torn apart. That is an analogy. You want to describe it, yet you want to have that certain level of detachment with it. So you know when you're describing something and when you're giving it sort of when you're observing it from a neutral perspective, it's also you're like an author, you're like writing a scene basically. So you're trying to describe what this character is going through. So we can assume the emotion is almost like an external character, and we want to describe what she's going through, what she's feeling or he's feeling emotionally. So use analogies. You can practice by writing things down on your own in your own time. So once you've given it that description, almost settle down or meet it, bring your awareness to it. Just look at your emotions, look at the distress, listen to the story it's trying to tell you, listen to the voice it is trying to portray to you. What is this emotion telling you? What is the message it's trying to give you about this experience you've just had, about a circumstance, or about a thought you just had that first triggered that emotion to arise? So take the time, take the moment to just simply listen with all your heart. with all of your awareness and conscious presence, just listen. So, for most of us, we've spent our lives ignoring, resisting, almost running away from our emotions because sometimes they're too much. It's too difficult to face them, especially if they're very strong emotions like grief. If you face a loss like heartbreak, these are very, very strong emotions, and when you face them, it's very difficult to just simply be there. But take the time, first anchor yourself in your physical self. Take the time. You are your space holder. You are holding space for yourself. So these aspects of your psyche can come forth and be in this safe space that you're holding, that you are enabling them to have. And listen, just simply listen. There's no need for reaction. There's no need for judgment. Just go through the process. Sometimes the message might not be clear. Sometimes the message could be a different emotion. So, once again, describe that emotion. And as we go through that process, while we consciously attempt or we consciously try to meet these emotions, to describe them, to almost look at them from an external perspective, almost like characters, like if we're writing a book, like characters in our book, we want to understand them because we love them all, right? We love and we see the reason and the importance of each single character that we've created. So these are almost characters within ourselves that we want to approach, we want to meet, and we want to meet with unconditional love and compassion. So this is the key. This is what you need to have. This is what you would, it will be ideal to develop as you go through the process of connecting with emotions, connecting with feelings. So take the time. And so, like I said, as the conscious mind begins to perceive these emotions, it's almost begin to describe it, understand it. It is the subconscious mind that comes to the fore as well. It is awareness that is almost subconscious that comes to the fore to meet these emotions. It will receive the message that is not being grasped by the conscious mind. So don't worry about it. The subconscious aspect of yourself knows what to do, and by the simple virtue of your presence, of your unconditional compassion and love, it begins to transmute some of these emotions. Almost you instinctively or intuitively know what to do with them, know how to respond. So we don't, like I always say, we don't want to react. We want to have a neutral response. We want to meet our, we want to act from a place of peace, of calm, and of love. These are the fundamental premise that we want to integrate, especially when we meet experiences in life that they're not always positive, they're not negative, but they're just experiences. We want to meet them from this perspective that they are experiences that we need to have or that we are experiencing. So take the time to listen to that message, to meet that emotion. You can almost feel a sense or a feeling of love almost surrounding this emotion. Almost imagine this sense of love surrounding this emotion. Take the time. I keep repeating this phrase, take the time, because in the beginning it is essential to remind yourself of that. It is essential to almost be aware that the process takes as long as it takes. It is self-guided. It knows what to do, but we're almost trained to have everything be done quickly. So we don't want to bring that sort of constriction into this process. We want to keep this space open. Take whatever time you need, because in the beginning, in when you're starting to develop this practice, when you're starting to integrate this practice into your meditation or your mindfulness or your emotional healing, it is almost it's imperative to remind yourself it is okay, because this process will take time. So set out a certain period of time, perhaps half an hour or more than that, to set aside some time so you can let your emotions speak to you for as long as they need. And when you feel, because this is also bound to happen in the beginning or even in the later stages when you've practiced this several, for a few months or for years, this is also bound to happen, especially for stronger emotions. Your mind almost wants to pull you away from it because it's trying to protect you. So whenever the mind does that, pulls you away from this connection you're now in the middle of with your emotions, just simply come back into the moment, come back into the practice. Once again, observe your breath. Observe your breath. Take your time. Allow for as long as it takes to feel your physical body. Once again, we have to anchor ourselves physically. Feel our physical sensations. And then observe the emotion that is now rising up. So we don't have to go back to the earlier emotion, because emotions, once they have transmuted or transferred their message to you, they almost ebb back into pure awareness or pure consciousness. They don't stay as they are. So this is the beauty of emotions. They what do you call it? They transform from one emotional state to another, and usually they transform from lower emotional states to higher emotional states. So take the time to allow yourself to go through the process, and the more you do this practice, the more you allow yourself to sink into the moment, the more you will observe as the emotions transfer or transform from one state to another. So you want to almost observe this micro transformation that happens in the beginning. Later on, you will observe it very clearly. It becomes so obvious to you. So when you've been taken out, or your mind has left you, taken you down a different path, just simply come back and observe what emotion is arising right now. Meet that, and then move forward. So when you see that that emotion almost ebbs, zooms out into sort of a neutral energy, there's no charge to it, there's no push or pull. There's no reaction that you are having emotionally to it, then you can move to the next emotion. So you can do this as many times as you like until you reach a very, very neutral emotional state, or you feel calm, you feel at peace. Once you go through this process, you will usually feel relief, because we hold on to emotions because we have not processed them. We hold on to them, and then we hold them actually physically in different parts of our body, and that's why um, we sort of start to feel a constriction in our gut, or we start to feel compression in our spine. Um, all of this is a result of holding on to emotions for long periods of time without sort of processing them. And the reason we process emotions, this is probably key, I should have said this in the beginning. The reason we process emotions in the first place is so that we process experience. We process the experience that we've been through. We process the sort of moment by moment things that happen in this life because we are relating ourselves to them. Though we are living our life, we are still in a relation to our life. So it's almost the aspect of our psyche is trying to translate, sort of affect your life and yet receive the consequence of that effect. And consequences can be positive too. So you may have very positive emotional experience from a very positive circumstance, and you may the psyche may integrate that emotion positively. So we want to while we do that naturally with positive emotions, because we don't have that resistance towards positive emotions, we want to also process negative experiences. And if we don't process negative experiences, this results in certain blocks happening psychologically, and we don't want these blocks. We don't want to have psychological blocks, because psychological blocks equal emotional trauma, equals mental and physical trauma. And if you don't process them for even longer periods of time, usually years and years, these psychological trauma starts to become physical. It starts to manifest as diseases, because our emotions have physical counterparts. So we feel our emotions physically. So we feel them in our guts, we feel them in our feet, we feel them in the back, we feel them along the spine or in our heads, in our brain. So if we keep these feelings constantly, our physical selves is under distress. It's stressed because it's trying to cope with this emotional distress that's occurring. So when it's in pressure that way for lengthened periods of time, it begins to shut down. Then the rest of our body starts to kind of compensate for that shutting down, and then our whole selves, our all whole physical, emotional, mental selves are all now out of alignment, out of balance. And so we don't want things to get that way. And if we are facing or we are experiencing certain aspects of ourselves that are currently in distress, that are currently facing some physical ailments, we can use this to process these emotions, and then almost transform them, or transform the emotional states into higher ones, into wisdom really, and then integrate that wisdom. So every experience is meant to tell you something. Every experience is our being learning, is our being, it's almost learning this world, experiencing this world. So we want to give ourselves the um, the energy, or sort of the ability to process these experiences neutrally, because we're just beings experiencing this world. So I hope this video has um, served you in some way, and I hope you will have the courage and the strength to meet your emotions from a more compassionate perspective, with love, unconditionally, and perhaps that will give you a more balanced emotional life. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.